Hello, everybody. Dave Webster, Identity Crisis Design. Stitched a video together about a project that I had done about 13 years ago, and I had the chance to revisit it recently. Unfortunately, there was an incident, more like falling off the lift type of event. Nobody got hurt. This did not happen on the road. But when this customer first came to me, the idea was to put crazy clown faces all over this bike, which was totally black. And that makes things a little tough because putting white colors over black is typically 3 times as much work. But it's not unusual for a customer to expect you to expand on an idea. They don't always come right out and ask, but sometimes they do. They'll be like, I'm just kicking this around. Maybe you can do something with it. And I saw this as an opportunity, instead of putting a bunch of faces all over a bike, to make the job more interactive for other people to look at, more interesting for me to paint, and also a much more dramatic composition filled with textures and fun and insanity. So my process was rather loose. In other words, there wasn't a lot of preliminary sketches beyond just getting a general style for how things were going to look. But because I knew I was telling a story that starts with the front end of the bike, I needed to create an entrance. And after some thought, I came up with the Tunnel of Lust. The process for painting the front fender basically dictated how I was going to go through the rest of the bike. So with a milky white color loaded into my airbrush, I sketched out how I wanted the Tunnel of Lust to look, and that's where the rhythm of the storytelling started. Once I had an idea and I was able to start fleshing it in and adding details, and I knew it was solidified, I could let my brain think about the next idea for the next section. The back of the front fender, the left side of the tank, the right side of the tank, and the side covers, and so on. So while my hands are coloring in the last thing that I thought of, my brain can think about the next idea. What accident will befall the high wire act? What's going to happen to the human cannonball? And not so funny story, when I was in the middle of painting this, ouch, you can see what happened to the bag right there. It's totally broken up. But the section of the tiger attacking the animal trainer, it's the news story about Siegfried and Roy. One of the tigers attacked one or both of them. That occurred while I was in the middle of painting this. So that was something I didn't have to come up with on my own. Life imitates art, or versa versa. So anyways, this is basically what got sent back to me, and I wasn't going to be able to fix it, but I was going to use it because on the back of the bag and the fenders, the artwork has to line up. It's a giant illustration across the back of all 3 parts, the middle of which, the big back fender, was undamaged. So I didn't have to repair that, but I did have to line everything up. So how this occurred was the bike was parked against the back wall of a garage, and then a car was being pulled in so that it could be worked on. And a foot slipped off the brake, and it kind of just rolled into the bike sideways, crushing the bags, which is why the rest of the bike is fine. The middle fender is fine. It was just the pressure against the 2 outside bags being pinned between the wall and the vehicle that caused them to crack and break. And so that's how we got here. On the bright side, it wasn't a complete and total loss. The lids are intact, and they have some artwork on them too, some residual texture where the bag blends into the lid, and I needed to be able to match that up too. So all these parts got sent to me as I don't know what you need to get this fixed, so I'm just sending you everything. Do whatever you have to do, which is fine. The situation 13 years later is different than it was when I originally painted the bike. I'm not in the same workspace. I'm not working with the same people. In fact, I'm doing something completely different for a full-time job. On the plus side, I don't have to worry about getting this job done in time so that I can pay bills on time. That's already taken care of. Additionally, it's all at the house. I don't have to leave to go somewhere else to do this. I can just come home and walk into the next room and start airbrushing. 13 years ago, I could give this bike my full attention because this is all I was doing. For the last decade, I've been working full-time and doing custom paint work on the side. So it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other, bird in the hand, two in the bush, or catch-22 or something like that. Anyway, right about when these parts came in, I think about a month later, we were put on 12-hour days, which at the time wasn't super bad because I was going to be giving these parts over to my very talented painter friend Phil, who was going to do all the prepping and the priming and the base and the clear and the sanding, putting in the lights and getting these things ready for me so that I could do all of the artwork. And I knew that was going to take him some time because he's got the same thing going on that I do. He's working full time and doing this on the side. So everybody knew that this was going to be a project that happened over the winter. But what I didn't expect was that I was going to be doing these 12-hour days almost the entire time I had these parts in my possession. So it changed the way that I attacked this paint job. The first time around, there was a lot more exploring that I did creatively. On the original bike, there was no rules. I could make the story up as I went along, and there was a lot more creative freedom. This time, I had to follow rules that I had set up for myself. And that's not even that bad because you don't have to think about what's going to happen next. That part of the job is done. The part of the job that was different this time around is that I had to think about what I was going to do with the little amount of time that I had per day. So you're going to work for 12 hours and then you're coming home and you're supposed to sleep for 8, which means you've only got 4 left. And half an hour of that is taken up by driving back and forth to work. Thank God I live so close to my job. Otherwise, it would have been impossible, except for on the weekends. So I spent time thinking about how am I going to fill this space today, and pick, I'm doing the banner, or I'm starting on the clown, and then later I'm going to mask him and then do the fire, or do the fire first, or do the tents first. But get this part done now and worry about what you're going to paint on top of it later. Don't worry about you're going to have characters running around in the foreground. Just get the background done. Get something done. I wanted to be able to take pictures and this video so that I could have something to put together later. It's not very often that you get an opportunity to improve on an old project, let alone document the process. And that in and of itself is its own chore. Setting up cameras, getting them in the right place so that you can just hit go and then get to painting. And then you end up getting into your project, forgetting that you're surrounded by these things, and you go to reach for a bottle of color or an airbrush or something, smack your head into the camera because you have it set right there, because that's where your hands aren't going to be in the way. Or are they? I don't know. There's plenty of video that was in here after looking through it all was unusable because there was too much me in it. I'm just blocking the way. I'm not thinking about it because I'm too busy thinking about what's going on in front of me. It really takes you out of the project when what is constantly on your mind is this a good angle, or is it even on? For instance, sometimes you have to walk away from the project to rest your eyes and your brain, give yourself some objectivity so that when you come back, you can look at what you've done so far and assess as to whether you're satisfied with it. You shut the camera off to walk away, and then you forget to turn it back on when you come back. The whole side cover that displays the human cannonball, I painted that before I even turned the camera on. It totally escaped me. But with all things, that's going to get better with practice. I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy myself while I was doing this, and I did. Once you get in the zone and there's those times where the airbrushes are just clicking and the paint is perfectly thin and you got the right music playing, and it feels more like a ride, which with practice is something that you'll be able to feel more and more often. Practice builds muscle memory. The same way that RAM is responsible for repetitive calculations, so those calculations don't tax your CPU, muscle memory takes care of the physical part of performing art so that your brain can take care of the creative part of solving design problems, coming up with new original ideas and techniques. And working with this stuff every day is what keeps the rust from forming. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and the less time it takes to get back into it if you have to put it down. That's why having a sketchbook is a big deal, because you want to be able to keep those juices flowing even when you're not working in front of a job like this. That being said, when you're practicing or when you're working like this, it is just as important to put everything down and walk away and give your brain a rest and your eyes a rest. It is entirely possible to oversaturate yourself with practice stimulus or work stimulus as much as you need to get something done, or as much as you want to learn something and get it right now. You need time for the information and everything that you're doing to get into the cells of your body and brain. It has to be absorbed, or more accurately, give it time to digest. If you don't, you'll just suffer from diminishing returns and become frustrated. And that's not to say to be lazy and procrastinate, but you can sit in front of a project long enough to where you need to get out, you need to look at something real, even if you're just going to a different room or different floor of the house or whatever. You don't stay there forever, get back to the job, but you have to refresh your eyes. You have to look at something real so that when you do come back, you can be more objectively critical about what needs to happen next, if something needs to be fixed. And that's especially on projects that are this complicated as far as illustration goes. Not a lot of paint jobs are. Very often you're dealing with textures and a spot illustration or two. Even at big bike rallies, the percentage of jobs that are full-on illustration murals from front to back, top to bottom, is low in comparison to other traditional paint jobs like flames, scallops, or heavy flake, and like a lowrider style, a lot of pinstriping. Those paint jobs are so much fun, and they take a lot of material. It takes a lot of patience too, because if you don't let that stuff dry the way that it's supposed to, it will come back and bite you in the worst way possible. But I do carry on. Something I would like to point out about this job this time around that was different than the first time around is the apparatus that you can see right in front of the bag. The 2x4s on casters is holding a rear end so that I can attach a rear fender and bags the way that they would be if they were mounted on a bike. I have brackets for old style and new, depending on what somebody brings me. But I keep this thing handy because balancing these bags and fenders when you need to have a mural go across all three parts across the rear, and you need to get them lined up, and the only solution that you have is boxes and cans at just the right height, and you can't move it around. Boy, is it a pain. This is so much better. Like a lazy Susan, a minor convenience that you didn't know you needed until you had it. Vinyl cutter might even fit into that category. A job that has this many moving parts, you're going to want to pull out every trick in your bag, and this is one of them. Referring to my earlier thoughts about walking away and giving yourself a mental break, a project like this that has many moving parts, you will find that there are opportunities for you to move to a different aspect of the job that's going to use different parts of your brain so that you can take a rest from one but still move forward with the project while doing something that is a little more mundane. Weeding vinyl in this case, or designing a graphic to be cut and weeded later. Or if you're a one-man band like me, there's going to be opportunities to invoice a client, or in this case, lay down some audio and cut some video. But it's a juggling act that you can use to your advantage so that you're never bored, always busy, always producing something. But getting back to design and composition for a bit. Speaking specifically to the swing on this side of the bag and the carousel on the other side of the bag, I opted to use large silhouetted areas for a few reasons. One is those areas of the bag are not easily visible because they're forward, they're angled down, and they're the closest to the bike itself. So you can't really see what's going on there. On the painting end, it's much easier than adding a lot of detail, especially on a black bike. You put down your mask, paint your effects or your background, peel it up, instant dramatic effect. Leave all of your heavily detailed areas, all of your wow factor to these spots here where they're right in your face. The most anticipation I had for repainting a portion of this project would be the left bag. In looking at old pictures, I saw a lot of empty space. More empty space than you would want if you were trying to convey the idea that this is a crowd, this is madness, and people are trying to escape. And with too much empty space, it looks like they've got room to get away. So originally I tried to recompose things on the fly like I did before, thinking that I could just rearrange some things and add a new character here or there. But I hit a conceptual wall and decided to shoot a picture of the bag, resize it in the computer, do my drawings and plan things out, print them to size, and do a chalk rubbing, and continue forward now that I had a solid plan. So I'm using the lesson from the front of the bags and making some silhouette shapes so that I can get my details in using white and then layer the colors in with candies. Starting with black allows me to cover up the previous background colors very easily. That way, the thinned out white that I'm using to get my details doesn't have to compete with all those colors. It only has to go up against the black, which you'll notice is allowing me to create an outline without actually painting an outline. This portion of video is really just showcasing the amount of detail that you can squeeze out of the Krios PS770. The cap to that paint reservoir is about the size or maybe a little bit bigger than a quarter, just to give you an idea of how small you can get. And these are the elephants that our clown friend is trying to scare with that mouse. Right here, you can see where the brackets for those bags sometimes would get in the way. Another reason why I like to have those silhouettes on the front, on the leading inside portion of the bag. Yeah, you can see me trying to find the right angle to get the wood grain in on this balloon stand. I knew that I would be able to reach it at some point. It was just took a little bit of figuring out, and I did not want to try taking off the bag just so that I could reach that one area that, again, a lot of people are not going to be looking at. They will be seeing this. So this is on the other side of the bracket, the scared mom and kid. These two characters, I really like the way they looked on the first bag, so I wanted to recreate them. Hopefully improve on the original, of course, but like on the side that has the fire eater, I was able to move some things around and eliminate some empty space. In watching this, I'm reminded that no matter how finely tuned your airbrush is and how detailed it can get, and how perfectly your paints are thinned, and how precisely your pressure has been set, everything could be absolutely dialed in. But because the image is so small, all of your subtle movements are going to be magnified, which can make getting details into these smaller images a bit of a wrestling match. So you can see here in the end a before and after. There are some things that I did add once Phil got done with his initial clear and sand. I used a sun gun to make sure this looked correct. Made an improvement on that weasel-looking bear and some detail into that panther's face. And it looks like I added blood. I could have sworn there was blood in the original one, but I guess not. And so here's your nice big reveal, your before and after. Boy, it's nice to have this thing back together again, out of my hands and back on the road. It's gotten a lot of attention over the last 13 years, and with riding season starting again, it's going to be getting even more attention for years to come. I find that I always learn something new with every project, whether it's technique or time management or money management or something. And even though I had already done this paint job once before, it was no different in that respect. This clown on the back was my absolute favorite. I am so happy that it took no damage. All we had to do was put some candy in on this lens so that we could get our red brake light back. This is like putting a cherry on the sundae. the last thing it needed, and now he's got an official brake light again. So I'm looking for photos of this bike out there in the wild during this riding season, and when they show up, I will share them out. But until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it out, find me on social media, links in the description, and until next time, keep slinging that paint and keep the shiny side up.